It all began on a warm July afternoon, when the air outside smelled like rain and the sound of distant thunder rolled across the Oregon hills. I remember sitting by the kitchen window, watching the storm clouds build up over the tall pine trees, and thinking how peaceful everything seemed. I didn't know that peace was about to break into 1,000 tiny pieces. My name is Emily Carter, and for nearly 25 years, I believed I had the kind of marriage people envied. Mark, my husband, was charming, successful, the kind of man who could light up a room with his smile. He worked as a real estate developer, always busy, always confident, always in control. Our son Ryan was away at college, and I spent most of my time managing our home, taking care of things, being the supportive wife. Mark often said I was his anchor, his peace, his home. I used to blush when he said that, never realizing that behind those words was a man who had already drifted far away from me. That afternoon, I found the first crack in our perfect picture. I was cleaning Mark's office, dusting around his laptop, when I saw an email notification pop up. It was from someone named Vanessa Reed. The subject line simply read, "Last night was unforgettable." My heart skipped. I stared at the screen, telling myself it must be work-related. Maybe she was a client. Maybe it was innocent. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. And before I knew it, I had clicked on the email. The message was short, simple, intimate. "I can still feel your arms around me. Can't wait for next weekend." I felt the ground disappear beneath me. My hands trembled. The air suddenly felt too heavy to breathe. I remember standing there for a full minute, frozen, the storm outside finally breaking, rain slapping against the window. I closed the laptop slowly, my reflection staring back at me from the black screen, and I whispered to myself, "No, it can't be." For days, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind, every business trip, every late-night phone call, every moment he said he was working late. They all started to fit together like dark puzzle pieces. When Mark came home that night, I watched him carefully, the way he loosened his tie, kissed my forehead, and asked about dinner. It was all so ordinary, so normal, but now every movement felt rehearsed, calculated. "Long day?" I asked softly, pretending to be calm. "The usual," he said, pouring himself a drink. "You know how clients are, always last-minute calls." "Vanessa called?" I asked, forcing a smile. He froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. "Yeah, she's handling the Portland property. Why?" "Just curious," I said, turning away, pretending to stir the soup, my heart pounding in my ears. That night, when he fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the sound of rain still echoing in my head. I realized that my marriage was not a home anymore. It was a beautifully painted cage. A few days later, Nancy Miller, our neighbor, stopped by. She always had something to say, but this time, her voice carried hesitation. "Emily," she said, lowering her voice, "I don't want to stir up trouble, but I think I saw Mark downtown last week, at Bella's, that fancy restaurant, and he wasn't alone." "Who was he with?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I think it was that young woman who works with him, Vanessa, tall, blonde, red coat. They looked close." I smiled weakly. "Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate you telling me." After she left, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the clock on the wall. Every tick sounded like a countdown to something breaking inside me. That night, Mark came home late again, his shirt slightly wrinkled, the smell of expensive perfume faintly clinging to him. "Rough day?" I asked quietly. He sighed. "You have no idea. Clients are impossible." I nodded. "You should take Vanessa with you next time. She seems to make things easier." He looked at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Just an observation." He didn't reply, just walked past me, but the tension in the air was sharp enough to cut through silence. A week later, I finally gathered enough courage to open his laptop again. This time, I looked through the email folder, and what I found confirmed every fear I had. Travel bookings, hotel receipts, messages filled with affection and secret promises. They had been seeing each other for almost a year. I sat there, numb, tears slipping down my cheeks, not from anger, but from a deep hollow pain, the kind that makes you question every memory you've ever held close. Later, I called Deborah Collins, my old friend from college. She was now working as a paralegal. "Deb, I think Mark is cheating on me," I whispered through the phone. Her voice softened. Emily, listen to me carefully. Don't confront him yet. Find out everything first. You'll need proof. Proof? I asked. Yes, she said firmly. If he's been hiding money or assets, you'll need to know. These things get messy. That night, I sat in front of the fireplace, watching the flames dance, wondering how something that once felt so warm could now look so cruel. Ryan called the next morning, cheerful as always. Hey Mom, how's everything? I tried to sound normal. Good honey, just the usual. Dad told me you've been a little stressed. Is everything okay between you two? I swallowed hard. Of course everything's fine. He chuckled. You always worry too much. And just like that, my own son's voice felt miles away. Days turned into weeks, and I began to live two lives, one where I smiled, cooked, and pretended everything was normal, and another where I quietly gathered pieces of truth, receipts, messages, screenshots, each one cutting a little deeper than the last. Deborah guided me through everything. She helped me look through Mark's financials. And what we found wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. Mark had opened a joint investment account under both his and Vanessa's names, transferring money from our savings, my savings. When I saw the numbers, my hands shook. He's using my name, I whispered. Deborah nodded slowly. You have every right to be furious, Emily, but be smart about it. Don't let him see you break. That night, Mark came home early smiling. Pack a bag, Em, I'm taking you to the lake house this weekend. We need a break. The lake house. Our favorite place, the one I decorated with my hands, every corner filled with memories. I smiled faintly. That sounds wonderful. But inside, I was already making a plan. The next morning, I stood by the mirror, brushing my hair, staring at the woman looking back at me. I barely recognized her. Her eyes weren't soft anymore. They were quiet storms. I whispered to my reflection. You've been silent too long. As I packed my bag, I looked around the room one last time, the framed photos, the laughter trapped in old pictures, the memories that now felt like strangers. And I realized something. This trip to the lake house wouldn't be about saving a marriage. It would be about saving myself. I closed my suitcase slowly, took a deep breath, and walked downstairs. Mark smiled, keys in hand. Ready? I smiled back. More than ever. The storm outside had cleared, but inside me, another one had just begun. The lake house had always been my escape, a quiet place tucked between tall pines and a wide silver lake that shimmered under the morning sun. I used to think it was our little heaven, the place where love lived, but this time, it felt like a stage, and I was walking into a play where I already knew the ending. Mark drove with his usual charm, humming softly to the radio, talking about how good it felt to get away. I nodded at all the right moments, pretending to listen, my hands resting on my lap, my mind elsewhere, counting every lie he'd ever told me. When we arrived, the house looked exactly as it always did, perfect, calm, untouched. The porch swing still creaked gently in the breeze. The lake still sparkled like glass, but I couldn't feel the beauty anymore. I only saw ghosts of the life I used to love. Mark unpacked the bags, poured us both a drink. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. I looked at him for a long moment, his eyes warm and confident, like a man who thought he was in control of every situation. To truth, I said quietly, clinking my glass against his. He smiled, not realizing how much weight those two words carried. The first night, I barely slept. I kept hearing the sound of his phone buzzing in the other room. At 2 a.m., I finally got up, walked barefoot across the wooden floor, and found his phone lying face down on the table. I turned it over, the screen lit up, and there it was, another message from Vanessa. Miss you already. I can still taste the wine. I stood there in the dark, staring at those words, the silence pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I felt anger rising, not the kind that explodes, but the kind that burns slowly, silently, until it becomes something unstoppable. The next morning, I sat outside by the lake, the air cool, the water still, and I began to write in my journal. For years I had written small notes, grocery lists, reminders, but this time, I wrote the truth, every detail. Every moment of betrayal, every lie. By the time Mark came outside, I had written 15 pages. You look deep in thought, he said, smiling. Just writing, I replied, trying to remember everything. He kissed the top of my head. You always were sentimental, he said, walking back inside. Later that day, Deborah called. "I've got the full report," she said, her voice serious. "What did you find?" "Emily, he transferred almost half of your joint savings into that investment fund, and Vanessa's listed as co-owner." I closed my eyes. "So it's true?" "Yes," Deborah said softly. "He's preparing to walk away, and when he does, he'll leave you with nothing." "Not if I walk first," I whispered. That evening I cooked dinner, the same meal I used to make when we were happy: grilled salmon, mashed potatoes, red wine. I wanted it to feel familiar, comforting, but this time, it wasn't love I was serving, it was goodbye. During dinner, Mark talked about expanding his company, how our future looked bright, how we were finally stable, his voice confident, his lies polished. "That sounds wonderful," I said softly, "but I've been thinking about my own future too." He looked surprised. "Your future?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "I'm starting over on my own." He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Emily, what are you talking about?" "I know everything, Mark," I said, my voice calm, steady. "The emails, the trips, the money, Vanessa." His face turned pale. "You've been going through my stuff?" "I went through my life," I said quietly. "You just left your fingerprints everywhere." He stood up, furious. "You don't understand, it's not what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I said, standing too. "You betrayed me, not just as a husband but as a partner. You used my trust to fund your affair." The silence that followed was sharp and endless, the kind of silence that makes you realize something has died between two people, something that will never come back. He tried to speak, but I raised my hand. "I'm not here to argue, Mark. I'm here to tell you that when we go back home, I'm leaving. I've already talked to a lawyer, and I've moved my part of the savings to a separate account." His mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "You think you can just walk away?" he said finally, his tone bitter. "I already have," I whispered, turning toward the window, watching the reflection of the lake in the glass. "You just didn't notice." The next morning, I left before he woke up. I packed quietly, loaded my car, and drove away, the road winding through the forest, sunlight breaking through the trees. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. When I reached home, I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the kitchen counter. It made a small metallic sound, like an ending. Days later, I filed for divorce. Deborah helped with everything, and though the process was painful, I felt stronger with each passing day. Mark tried to call, text, even came by once, but I didn't answer. Silence became my closure. Ryan came home from college 2 weeks later. "Mom," he said softly. "Dad told me what happened." I didn't believe him, but then I saw the news about his company, the fraud investigation. I looked at him quietly. He made his choices, Ryan, and now we live with them. He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner." I smiled faintly. "We all see things when we're ready." Over the next few months, I sold the lake house, started working part-time at a local bookstore, and found joy in small things again: morning coffee, rain tapping on the window, quiet evenings with no lies. One day, while cleaning, I found my old journal, the one I wrote in at the lake. I opened it, read the first page, and realized something important. Pain doesn't disappear, it transforms. It teaches you who you are when everything else is gone. I closed the journal and whispered, "Thank you for breaking me, because now I know how to build myself." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and freedom, and for the first time in years I felt alive.